Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Over the Should podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. Many of you know what Over the Should is about from the intro to the podcast, but I've had a few folks reaching out asking why Over the Should and who are you and what are you all about. So I thought I would take the opportunity to really tell you how the podcast came to be and bring you back to that moment of my life where I had sort of a meltdown. And it is that meltdown that led me to becoming a coach, getting multiple certifications, leading women's group programs, and now leading retreats for women. I am fiercely passionate and mission-oriented around the need for women to have agency over their own lives. And in order for you to claim your life and where you want to go and really live up to your ambitions and your dreams, you have to ditch the expectations that everybody else put on you. You have to be willing to set aside the shoulds of being a wife and a mom and a colleague and how you show up in your community so that you can show up authentically. And I am not going to lie, that is so hard. It was one of the hardest things I did, changing from how I grew up believing I needed to be polite and small and humble and accommodating in all situations and always grateful and always in deference to people who are smarter or who know more, and always thinking that couldn't possibly be me. I couldn't possibly be the smartest in a room because what did I have to offer, and really struggling with those inner doubts. And they start really young and they just stay with you unless you're willing to change the game. So let me take you back to that fateful day. And before we land on that day, I want to just tell you, you don't have to have the full mental breakdown that I think I did. There were so many indicators along the way that told me this wasn't quite right, that the day-to-day, the to-dos, the yeses, the lack of boundaries, that wasn't healthy. It wasn't what I needed, but I dismissed those indicators. I pretended they didn't exist. It was like the check engine light was on and I was like, I'll just keep driving, no problem here, until the engine blew up. I so firmly believed that if I said no to people in my life or set boundaries or made time for myself at the expense of time for something else, that I was being selfish. And I fully believed that the biggest badge of honor for me as a woman was to be selfless, and to hear those accolades of how does she do it all. I lived and breathed for that. So there I was. It was years ago, and it was a beautiful fall day. It was the kind of day that makes you think about apple pies and pumpkin spice lattes. There was a chill in the air, boots, sweaters, just the perfect weather. I was working all day from my home office, and the dogs had been laying at my feet, and I could hear the kids milling about outside of the office doors, but I didn't have to tackle that yet. And so as my day came to an end, I checked off the last item of my to-do list. And I felt a sense of accomplishment. Not every day did I get through an entire to-do list. Often those items would spill over to the next day, but on this date, I did it all, and it felt really good. And my tradition is always to create a to-do list for the next day. And so I'll look at the calendar and I'll look at emails and I'll set myself up for success. So I started to look at the calendar for the next day, and I realized I had a PTA board meeting, and I didn't feel anything but frustration. I felt frustration that I had to go to another board meeting, and it felt like it was just yesterday since the last one, but it had been a month. I felt frustrated with myself that I said yes to this commitment, and my yes needed to mean yes, but I didn't really want to do it. I wanted to join the PTA board because there was a need for it, and there wasn't a lot of parents who were volunteering. I wanted to join the PTA because I thought it would give me insights into the school that the kids were going to, problems that they were having, finances, plans for the future, things that would help me help them navigate their school career, if you will. What I wasn't willing to recognize at the time, and it took some reflection, is I also said yes to the PTA board and to the Pop Warner board and to serving at church on Sundays and Sunday school because I wanted to be seen a certain way. There was very much an environment of how I was told I should behave as a female, and ego in terms of how I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be seen as a good mom, a good wife, a good member of society. I didn't need to join the board for those things to be true, but I had not decoupled yet at that stage. So I said yes to everything in hopes that I would get that pat on the back every once in a while that said, how do you do it all? How do you keep it all together? You're such a great mom. You're such a great whatever. I lived and breathed for those moments. External validation was food for my soul at that time of my life. So I wrote my to-do list for the next day, and I knew that as soon as I opened my office door, I would be hit with a little bit of a mess from the kids. And I started to walk down the hallway, and sure enough, in the living room, there were blankets on the floor from where the kids had probably watched a little TV, read a book, and just threw the blankets off when they were done. Their backpacks were dropped haphazardly in the kitchen, and I had to step over them to get stuff out to start preparing dinner. And then I picked their backpacks up and started going through them to find papers that needed to be signed or anything that needed to be acknowledged. Cooked dinner, served dinner, and I will say dinner is always one of my favorite times with the family. We do highs and lows, and it is great to be able to sit down with them and just ask them what's one good thing that happened and what's one thing that wasn't so great. And then we have a conversation around it. And if there was a day where they're like, I don't have a high or low, I made them say something nice about somebody else at the table. And so then it became like positive gossip in a way. Those are great memories, but every day, cooking dinner after working all day, and then clearing the table, and then washing dishes so that the kids can get their backpacks organized for the next day and do what they need to do. And knowing that when dishes were done, and I'm grateful, and I know I'm supposed to be grateful, and I genuinely was grateful because I understand that to be able to stand at that kitchen sink with running water and wash the dishes because my family had food to eat is a gift and a blessing, and I'm gratitude. And also, it was one other thing. And when I was done with dishes, it would be turning on a load of laundry. And when all of those things were done, I got to make my way to a shower. I lived for my 8 minutes of shower time every night. And sometimes I didn't even get solitude in the shower. I do not know if this is relatable to other people out there, but there were many, many times where my kids would leave the kitchen, walk through the living room where their dad was sitting, walk down the hallway, turn into the bedroom, turn into the bathroom, or knock on the door and say, Mom, can I have something to drink? And I would be like, yes, you can have something to drink. Of course you can. And all I could think of in my mind is like, I have never restricted them from having milk, water, juice, whatever was in the house. And why do they have to ask permission when I'm in a shower? I don't think they ask any other time. And why do they pass their dad to come down the hallway to ask me? And then my shower would be disrupted by more mental load. And again, trying to figure out how to be grateful in that moment didn't always come natural. And I will say, looking back on it, I had a lot of toxicity around the need to be grateful instead of addressing some of the challenges that were happening that made me feel frustrated or resentful. So there I was. This time I was in a shower that was peaceful. I turned the water on, I got it as hot as I could, because if your skin isn't slightly sloughing off, are you even doing a good job in the shower? And so I hopped in, and I was just thinking about the day and all of the to-dos and everything I said yes to, and feeling completely overwhelmed by the life that I had created and thoroughly underjoyed by it. And I didn't understand how that could possibly make sense, because I was literally living the life that I dreamed of. I had a house on a farm, and there was cows in the pasture and chickens that laid eggs for us every day. And I worked a corporate job as an executive, and my husband had a great job, and my kids were doing fine in school, and our family was loving, and I had all the things I had dreamed of, but I was so burned out and frustrated, resentful, and these negative traits, and I could not reconcile how the two things could coexist, how I could have desired this life and not find fulfillment in it. It burdened me. So sitting there thinking about all these things, I should be grateful. Why are you not feeling more grateful? And thinking about my to-do list and the PTA meeting that I have to go to, and the fact that I have to get out of the shower and take the load of laundry and put it into the dryer, because who else will do it? And nobody wants to wear moldy clothes in the house. And if I'm not washing up, people are re-wearing underwear. That's a stink fest. Like, I felt that it all fell on my shoulders. And I looked down, and my skin was literally red and starting to bubble. I was getting burned by the water. I started maniacally laughing and crying at the same time, because it dawned on me in that moment. I turned the water cooler, and I realized that this was the most perfect physical representation of what was going on inside of me. I was so distracted by all of my thoughts and all the things I said yes to, and how my life had just kept piling up of responsibilities, that I didn't even realize I was literally burning. And just like my life, I had said yes to so many things, and I was burning the candle at both ends to the point where I was resentful, frustrated, and burned out. I stood in that shower crying and just sobbing, and tears were coming down my face and falling on my chest and getting washed off by the water. And I just thought to myself, this can't be it. This cannot be my life. This isn't it. I am meant for more. And I don't mean more yeses. I mean more joy. I mean more being present in my own life and not just wearing a role, switching from mom to wife to blend to community to church to corporate executive. Where am I in this mix? I had lost myself completely trying to be a good girl, a good wife, a good, living up to all of the shoulds. And as I started to think about everything I said yes to, I got out of the shower and I'm drying off and I look in the mirror, it dawned on me that the person looking back at me was the exact reason my life was overwhelmed and underjoyed. I felt like I was caged and trapped, and I had willingly built this cage around myself. I always joke that it was a gilded cage. It was beautiful. It was gold. It was filigree. It was all the finest things you could ever want in a cage, but it was still a cage. And people would say, wow, that's beautiful. Look at your life. Look at all you've accomplished. How do you do it all? And I would think, golly, look at that gold shimmer. But it was still a cage that I willingly erected each bar of. And I knew in that moment I had to figure out how to start dismantling it. How do I deconstruct who I've been to become who I was meant to be? And I'll tell you, the journey hasn't been easy. It has been really challenging to come home to myself. I have gained so much and I have lost so much because of it. I started getting very clear about what was working and what wasn't working. Like journaling out, this makes me happy, this makes me not happy, and then asking myself why around it. I am a quality professional by trade. I'm a certified auditor, all of the nerdy things. And so part of your quality training is the 5 whys. You ask why 5 times to help get to the root cause. So that was 5 whying my life. Why do I feel resentful now? Because I am standing in front of the sink doing the dishes after I cook dinner, after I worked a full day of work. Why are you standing in front of the sink washing dishes after you cook dinner and worked a full day of work? Well, because it's my job as a mom. Why is that your job as a mom? Well, because that's what I have been told, that moms, take care of the family and the kids, and they provide the meals, and they're loving, and they're nurturing, and cooking is part of that nurturing role that I'm wearing. Why is that the role that you're wearing? Because I believed that's what I should be doing, because I got married and we slid into roles. And then I just kept asking why until I finally understood it's a part of the environment we were raised in that created the roles that we said yes to. And part of it was my ego wanting to hear that I was doing good at work and good at home. And that meant parenting like I didn't work and working like I didn't parent until I had nothing left of myself. So one of the best actions I took, and hardest actions at the time as a people-pleasing perfectionist who never wanted to hurt anyone's feelings, learning the power of no was critical for me in the early stages. And saying no was not easy for me. I am a people pleaser by nature. I imagine I was raised that way, and it's just become a core value to who I am. And I had to deconstruct that, because I would rather say yes to you and put myself on the back burner every day of the week if it makes you feel good. But that's really ego again, because it's about making you feel good so that you like me more. And in a sense, that's pretty manipulative, and I didn't realize that's what I was trying to do. So instead of honoring myself, I was manipulating the situation so you would like me more. Well, guess what? I don't have to be likable. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I would suggest I'm a spicy margarita, but I digress. I didn't know that then. And so I started working on what I call the power of no. So what do I mean by the power of no? Well, as I've already shared with you, I was a living, breathing, people-pleasing perfectionist, and it was my goal to make sure everybody was happy and that I was liked and likable, and I met all of the check marks of what I thought it meant to be a good woman. So I found myself hollowed out and emptied, and I realized that saying no was so hard for me because I didn't want to let anybody down. I didn't want to be a disappointment. I didn't want to be seen as confrontational or a diva or a bitch. in the office. I didn't want to miss out on opportunities because I said no when I could have just said yes and experienced something. So there was a little bit of FOMO in there. So it was this blend of wanting to be likable and my ego and how I was raised, not wanting to let anybody down, and also fear of missing out on something if I said no when I should have really said yes and I didn't. And so all of those things built up to me finding it nearly impossible to say no. Hence all of the boards that I served on and working in Sunday school and so on. There's a funny thing about saying no. It does make you unlikable to some people. When you say no, you are starting to establish boundaries. And for the most part, people like to exploit lack of boundaries. I heard from so many people when I first started to say no and establish boundaries, you're not the same person. You've changed. Even at the time my husband had said, like, you're not the person I married. He was right. And that was a fair statement. It was true. He married a 20-year-old who said yes to the asks and was submissive and working to be the Proverbs 31 type wife. And so as I was saying no, as I was trying to set boundaries, I heard, you're not the same person. We never had this at work. We've never had this problem before. You've always been my yes person. What's going on, Pamela? Is everything okay? So when you say no, recognize that it will be met with people being disappointed in you. And then you have to make the decision. Are you okay with disappointing others? Or do you want to keep disappointing yourself? Okay, so how I started to decide what to say no to. And I still struggle with it, being totally honest. But what I first did is I took a notebook and I said, what in my life do I need to say no to? And then I just jotted down everything that popped in my head. The PTAs, the certain assignments at work, the doing the dishes every single night of the week after doing X, Y, and Z. I put it all on the list. And then I asked myself, when do I think it's okay to say no? And I struggled with that one because I found that it was rather infrequently that I thought it would be okay to say no. So I started working through that and I wrote down, if I'm being honest, I need to say no when I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed. I need to say no when there's already too much on my plate. I need to say no when I'm extremely tired or I'm sick. I can think of a time when I had just had surgery and I was taking PTO to recover. And it was less than 18 hours after my surgery. And the boss called and said, hey, we just hired this new executive. I need you to walk him through X, Y, and Z. I'm going to have him call you. And I didn't say no. I said, okay. And I sat on a phone call in pain, a little loopy from medication, walking this new executive through something. Instead of saying no, is that something you can do today? Or no, so-and-so has been working with me on this. They might be better to help them right now. I can call in a couple days. I didn't do that. So knowing, really asking yourself, when is it okay to say no? When I'm overwhelmed, when there's too much on the plate, when I'm sick or tired, are perfectly acceptable times to say no. And then letting yourself get okay with that's really important. And then just remember, I know it's cliche, but no is a 2-letter word in a complete sentence. You always have the right to say no. You have the right to say no when it's somebody else's issue. Listen, your lack of preparation does not constitute an emergency on my part, okay? You can say no when you're feeling taken for granted. I don't want to keep doing the dishes and cooking dinner and doing the laundry every single day. I am exhausted by that, and frankly, I feel taken advantage of by my family. You have the right to say no when it's something you don't want to do, or it's something that does not align with your core values. Say no. Do not make yourself uncomfortable so others are comfortable. That is no way to live, and that is not taking agency over your life. That is just letting somebody should all over you. The next thing to ask yourself is, what's stopping me from saying no to these things? What's stopping me from saying no to these things? And I'll tell you, as I started to dig into it, I wanted to be likable. I wanted to be approachable. I didn't want people to think I was a bitch at work. I didn't want to be confrontational. And all of that stemmed from fear. Fear of somebody thinking I wasn't enough. Fear of somebody thinking I didn't belong or I didn't fit. All of it was based in fear. But work through that question. What's stopping me from saying no to these things? Another step is to really challenge your beliefs. And that's hard because our beliefs become our thoughts, and our thoughts inform our actions, and then our actions create the story of our lives. So really get clear about your beliefs around no. Ask yourself, what are your beliefs about people who say yes are? So Perhaps people who say yes are accommodating, people who say yes are kind, whatever your thoughts are, people who say yes are. And then ask yourself, people who say no are, and then see what comes up for you there. What does that make you feel like they are selfish? Does that make you feel something negative? Explore all of those thoughts, put them all on paper. And as you are thinking about the things that you have trouble saying no with, and as you're thinking about the things that you are having trouble saying no to, everything that popped in your mind, and then you're thinking about why you can't say no and what might be at the root of the reason that you struggle saying no. And then you're thinking about the beliefs, what you formed in your mind about what a person is when they say yes versus what a person is when they say no. Now that you've gone through some of those exercises, notice what you've learned about yourself, about how your beliefs have formed some of those thoughts that you have, and then those thoughts have taken shape into actions. And now those actions have maybe put you in a place where you have a whole entire calendar full of crap that you actually do not want to do and you should have said no to begin with. Jack Canfield is quoted as saying, "There are only two words that will always lead you to success. Those words are yes and no." Undoubtedly, you've mastered yes. So start practicing saying no. Your goals depend on it. So not only do we need to practice saying no, but we have to recognize the yes trap. So to recognize the yes trap, ask yourself these things. Why do I say yes when I'd rather say no? How do I benefit from saying yes? Because let me also be very clear with you here. I said yes to things I wanted to say no to in my career from a workload perspective, but I understand too that helped me advance. So there are benefits to saying yes, but I will say I would have advanced anyway. I didn't have to burn myself out to get there. But think about the benefits. Be fair to both sides. What are the benefits of saying yes? So then journal it out. When I say yes, I feel. And then how do you feel in those situations? Then ask yourself, when I say yes, I want other people to feel about me. And maybe that is that you're likable, that you're reliable, that you're helpful, that you're indispensable. And then I want you to ask yourself this question. When I say yes to this situation, what am I saying no to? And you're not always going to know what you're saying no to, but I'm certainly going to say there were times where I said yes to taking on an extra work assignment or joining a board, and I knew that those yeses meant no to time for myself, meant no to carving out opportunities for continuous learning, meant no to going and having a massage or having regular haircuts or going years without seeing a doctor. And then as you're continuing through that line of questions, ask yourself, when I say no, I feel. When I say no, I worry other people think about. And then ask yourself this beauty. If I say no to this situation, what things could I say yes to bring into my life? And it doesn't hurt to make sure you write out your biggest fears for saying no. What's really that root cause? What are you really scared of when you say no? And you've probably already touched on it at this point of your questions and answers in your journal. Now let's talk about the other no. I don't mean N-O, I mean K-N-O-W. How can you assertively say no to something if you don't know why you're saying no to it? To say no effectively, you have to be in touch with what's really important to you. Your vision, your values, your goals, where you're headed. It's so much easier to say no when you're clear on what you want and what you need out of life. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's easier. So to get to the root of the other no, ask yourself these questions. How would I like to spend more of my time? What am I doing? What am I working on? Who am I with? Where am I at? Where would I like to spend less time? What is my priority for the year? What is my priority for this month? What is my priority for this week? And the last question I would ask myself at this time is, if I had a magic wand, I would. And it's one of my favorite questions to ask. I even ask it when I'm being brought into a project to help solve some problems that they're having. I always ask, if you have a magic wand, what were the three wishes you would make? 3 things you would change? I would say take that to your personal life too. If I had a magic wand, I would say yes to the things that brought me joy. I would make sure to have time for self-care. I would make sure to have time for one-on-one moments with my kids. I would make sure to send out Manage Up Monday emails so my boss was tracking my priorities the same way I would. Go through that magic wand exercise and get really clear on the things that would excite you, would make you feel like you had more agency and control over the decisions being made in your life by you for your life. And if you want to keep going with more exercises in the other no, then list out the top 3 priorities in your life right now. And then write, how am I meeting these top 3 priorities? And then say to yourself or write out, what actions do I need to take to stay on track with these priorities? Because getting clear on your priorities and how you're meeting them and what you need to do to make sure you continue to meet them will also help you decide what is a yes and what is a no. And I want to be super clear with you. I had a heck of a hard time when I first started saying no. In fact, I didn't always outright say no, and I still don't, because it's really important to know your audience. So some thoughts on managing no. Managing how you approach no. I evaluate each situation differently. Now, I will say there's that old adage, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. I agree with that. If there is an immediate no response inside of my body, like, no, I don't want to do this, then I'm just going to say, no, I'm passing, no thank you, no whatever, or just no, right? There are going to be times, depending on the person who's asking something from you, depending on the situation, the season of your life, you might not know if it's a yes or a no, or if you should say yes, even if you're feeling like a no. So I'm going to give you a work example. I have always been complimented for being a high performer. And if you are a high performer, that is a kind way to say we're going to keep giving you a lot of work. So I had a boss and he kept giving me work, and I felt scared to tell him no, because he was a great boss and he had done so much for me in my career, and I didn't want to disappoint him. However, I recognized I was at this point now where if I didn't start taking some kind of control over my day and my schedule and my yeses, that I was going to have another meltdown, and I didn't know where that one would end up. So there came a day where he asked me to take on an additional task, and I looked at him and I said, that is such a good idea. I like that one. I'm going to put that on the list. But here are the other 5 things that we are working on right now, and here's the prioritization. Which one of these should come off so I can add this new thing? And he just looked at me and he was like, I forgot you were working on those things. So even having a no conversation that isn't outright saying no, but rather around prioritization of tasks and schedules, is a great way to remind your boss of everything that you have on your plate, and then to help them make a decision as to what's the most important thing to drive the company forward, or major initiatives for the organization, or the most return on investment for your time and their time. Having that data to drive those conversations is really important. And it was never a no, it was a yes and help me figure out what needs to come off the plate. And we got so good at this conversation. I think it amused him in the beginning. And then we just got to a place where it was, here's the cool new ideas, what's on the list. And we would work through it. And sometimes the cool new idea did not see the light of day because it was nowhere in the actual priority list. But we had to be able to have that conversation. So when it comes to managing how to say your no and getting comfortable with it, always evaluate your situation. The next thing is managing guilt. Oh my gosh. When I started telling people no and I started hearing the response of, you're not who you used to be, I felt so much guilt rising up inside of me. It almost made me want to say, I'll just do it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. A couple things around guilt. You are going to feel that when you start to implement change and it's not how you've shown up in the past. You're going to question if you're making the right decisions. I have to say to you that when you feel guilt for saying no in a place that was a definite no for you, take a moment, let the feeling happen, then let it go, pat yourself on the back, send yourself a congratulations, because you are doing something great. You are putting positive changes in your life that will change your near future. You're just in the messy middle right now. It'll get better. People will start to understand that you've set boundaries, and people will learn to respect them, or they will no longer be near the borders and they will go somewhere else. And that's okay too. And changing gradually is fine. If you think I came out of the gate saying no to everything and everyone, you are sorely mistaken about my depth of people pleasing. It was slow for me, and it wasn't always a no. Sometimes it was a prioritization conversation. Sometimes it was, can you tell me more about that so I can really think about how it's going to impact X, Y, and Z? And then it was a thoughtful conversation that resulted in, can't take this on right now, but so-and-so would be perfectly fit for this, or I can't take this on right now. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Please think about me in the future. All of that's fine, because how you deliver the message matters too. If it's a no and a middle finger, that's going to be taken quite a bit differently than a no thank you, or no, not at this time. And there's probably times in our life where it is a no and a middle finger, but those shouldn't be the norm. That's the exception. And if you've worked with me for any amount of time, you know one of the things I'm going to tell you to do is to practice. When I get ready for a speech, when I have a big presentation to give to important key stakeholders, when I have a hard conversation that I know is going to take place, I practice, I rehearse, I say all of the things out loud. And if it is going to be a dialogue, I even practice what the other person might say. And I know that sounds crazy. And if anybody peeped into the bathroom when I'm in the mirror, answering myself and then asking myself questions, they would probably think I was crazy. And I'm not saying they're wrong about that. I'm just saying it's also a method. So definitely practice saying no, because you're going to have somebody say to you, you are not who you used to be. And to be the most effective in that moment would be to have practiced. I'm sorry you feel that way, but these are the boundaries I've set. Otherwise, it can easily turn into, I'm sorry, let me just take care of that for you right now. And we don't want that. And then the last thing around managing no thoughts and responses is to let it feel good. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're letting people down. You might worry that you've let yourself down and you're missing out on something. Feel the feelings, but also let it feel good. Also let yourself be proud of what you're doing and the positive changes that you're making in your life to say no, to set boundaries, to reclaim your time, to reclaim agency, to say yes to the things that you want to do versus the things that people have told you that you should do. My friend, stop letting people should all over your life. You do not deserve that. So I've just led you all over the journey map. We had a little story about my complete and total meltdown in the shower that led me to the need to dismantle the cage that I had built all around myself. And some of the first steps that I took to get there, one of them was learning to say no and being okay in that moment, being willing to disappoint others so I didn't disappoint myself. It's not easy, but it's totally doable. It is literally the reason I started coaching women. It is the reason I run retreats. It is the reason I have the Reset group program. And it's the reason I started Over This Should podcast, because more people need to be out there telling other people, and specifically more women need to tell other women, you matter. You are important. Your dreams, your aspirations, your ambitions matters. Don't let anybody put you in a box, and dig in to the things that bring you joy, to what your purpose is. Dismantle those beliefs that came from our childhood that turned into thoughts, that turned into actions, that put us in a place in our life where we're like, is this really it? Because if you feel like, is this really it? Is there more? The answer is there is more, and you are worthy of more, and you deserve more, and you have to take those small and perfect steps to get yourself on the path to whatever more is for you. So thank you very much for being here on Over This Should. I would love to keep having these conversations with you around reframing and mindset techniques and different things that I did along the journey, as well as how my career exploded and I became an executive and then picked up the coaching work and all of the other things, bringing guests on who are transformation experts, who've done it in their own lives and who help other people. I want to serve you in a way that brings inspiration and insight to you. I want you to leave this podcast and be like, oof, those were some good ideas, or I can relate to that, or maybe you just laugh at some of the crazy things I'm probably going to say because I am me. And I'll be honest, I'm okay with that, because it's taken a long time for me to feel comfortable making silly jokes and letting my hair down, if you will, and being more than small, humble, and accommodating, but being loud and vivacious when I want to as well. So welcome to the party. Listen to Over This Should. If you're interested in coaching or want to check out one of the Reset programs or the retreats, let me know, because we are going to be breaking all of this down and growing together. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember, you're made for more.